Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, I'm Khafidaturrafi'ah and my friends Charline, Margia, Ansori, and Zuhrianto will present to you all about the kind of translation methods. Before I'm going to the material, I will tell you again what translation is. Translation is a process of transferring meaning and message from the source language to the target language. So, method of translation is the method used by translator in expressing the meaning of the source language as a whole language into the target language. Based on Newmark's book entitled A Textbook of Translation, there are 8 translation methods in translating. The 8 methods are separated in 2 classifications: source language and target language emphasis. Source language emphasis, there are word-for-word translation, literal translation, faithful translation, and semantic translation. And target language emphasis, there are adaptation translation, free translation, idiomatic translation, and communicative translation. The kinds of translation. The first is word-for-word translation. Word-for-word translation is a translation method in which the translator translates the text word by word and keeps the structure of target language similar with source language. The main use of word-for-word translation is either to understand the mechanic of the source language or come through a difficult text as a pre-translation process. And the examples are, the first example, the source language is I will go to Japan tomorrow. So, if we translate into target language, which is in bahasa, saya akan pergi ke Jepang besok. Remember, word by word. And the second is, I buy a new car. So, if we are translating using word-for-word translation, in bahasa is saya membeli baru mobil. Remember guys, word-for-word translation still focus with structure of the sentence from source language. So, it is why I buy new car in bahasa is saya membeli baru mobil if we are using word-for-word translation. Next, literal translation. In this method, the sentence translates word by word, but the result follows the nearest grammatical structure of target language. And the examples are, for oily and combination skin. If we translate the sentence by using word-for-word translation, then the result will be untuk berminyak dan kombinasi kulit. While in the literal method, the word kulit placed in front of berminyak and kombinasi. It is following the grammatical structure of bahasa. The target language of this translation can completely express the meaning that occur in the source language that try to convey that the product is specialized for those who have oily and combination skin. And the second example is the market is in the right side. So, the target language is pasar itu berada di sisi kanan. As you can see again guys, the translator focus with the grammatical structure of the sentence from target language or bahasa because we are using bahasa for target language. For your information, literal translation and word-for-word translation method should be applied in the first stage of translation.
So we'll continue my friend explaining about the kinds of translation method. So my name is Charline Margia Ansori and my student ID is 19320067. So the next is faithful translation. Faithful translation is try to duplicate the actual context meaning of the authentic within restraint of the target language grammatical function. This kind of translation is try to achieve the same aesthetic purposes of the source language. For example, source language is Soekarno is the first president in Indonesia, and translated into target language it become Soekarno adalah presiden pertama di Indonesia. You can see from the word structure and word order is typically the same. And the other example is Hatta is the first vice president in Indonesia. Translated into target language, it become Hatta adalah wakil presiden pertama di Indonesia. Next is semantic translation. Semantic translation is translate into more neutral words or functional terms. It emphasizes on the meaning, usually more detailed but shorter. This translation needs to be more effective because it only focuses on the meaning. For example, source language is she is an alcoholic. Change into target language, it become dia perempuan adalah pecandu minuman beralkohol. From here we can see that the alcoholic is the part where she doing something because of something. And another example is he is a bookworm, and change into target language it become dia laki-laki adalah seorang yang suka membaca buku. And then this is the last kind of translation for my explanation is adaptation. This is the freest form of translation because it translates literal words from source language culture to become the culture in form of rewritten or text. This kind of translation tends to share a culture from a literally works with TL, and the target language can change the cultural background to get the message across or the meaning across. For example, bawang merah, bawang putih was an adaptation from Cinderella. We can remember that bawang putih and Cinderella has the same chronological order, or adaptation in opening letters from the source language is sincerely yours. At the end of the letter we usually use that, and it adapts into target language, it becomes hormat saya. So I think that's all for me, and my friend Zuri will explain about the 3 other kind of translation. Thank you.
So I am Muhammad Zuhrianto, and now I will presentate free translation, idiomatic translation, and communicative translation. So now we have free translation. So this method emphasizes the content of the source language text than its form or structure. Or you can say that it only focuses on the content regardless of the form or the structure. And you can use this method when your purpose of translating is to only to transfer the idea, the messages from the source language, the idea, the main idea, to be translated in the target language that will be understandable in target language. So it doesn't matter how the form or the structure looks like, as long as the reader could understand the messages. Then we can see the examples here. The flowers in the garden, bunga-bunga yang tumbuh di kebun. So if we look more detail, the words are a little bit longer in the target language. Again, it doesn't matter how the form or the structure looks like, as long as the messages is delivered well and the reader could understand. And then we have idiomatic translation. So this method uses the original form of the target language, including grammatical structure and lexical choices. So it's different from the previous method, free translation, that did not consider the structure or the form. While the idiomatic translation, it does consider the grammatical structure and lexical choices. We can use this method maybe when it is for academic purposes, maybe an essay or a journal or any kinds of academic purposes, because we are using the grammatical structure here and also the lexical choices. We can see the examples here. Rina, take a seat, and the translated to Rina, silakan duduk. And then, who has he been living with? It translated to dengan siapa dia tinggal. And now we have the communicative translation. So this method attempts to render the exact contextual meaning of the original in such a way that both content and language are readily acceptable and comprehensible to the readership. So this method is addresses to the reader who doesn't expect any difficulties and expect a generous transfer of foreign elements into their own culture. Communicative translation is likely to be smoother, simpler, clearer, more direct, more conventional, and somehow it will make the reader understand it easily. Like they do not have to read it twice, or maybe even look for the meaning in another resources. So the reader expect the translation is simple as possible, so that they can easily understand the meaning. For example, no smoking in bahasa Indonesia dilarang merokok, and in Indonesia, awas anjing galak, and in English, beware of the dog. So I think that's all for the presentation of kinds of translation. I hope you can understand our presentation and our explanation. So Thank you so much for your attention. Goodbye.